Okay, can you all see the bars at the bottom with the Q&A box and everything, Erica and Noe? Okay, and then can you see people joining already? Awesome, that's great. Okay, because I can no longer see that on my screen. I don't know if something happened. Hmm.
Do you have a dual screen? Because sometimes it moves it to another.
I don't. Okay, there we go. It was the remote control thing. I was like, wait a minute, what's going on? But that's great. Ooh, awesome. Okay, so thank you everyone so much for joining. This is the UC Application and Admissions webinar hosted by Central Valley Scholars and our wonderful presenters here joining us, Noe Garcia from UCLA and Erica Sanchez from UC Berkeley. My name is Katya. I'm the events coordinator for Central Valley Scholars. We're going to go ahead and give it about 3 more minutes until 4:05 for people to, start joining the webinar and also get situated on our Facebook Live. If you are interested in that as well, you're always welcome to, moving forward, we're trying to make our webinars more accessible by also streaming them on Facebook Live when we can. So you can go ahead and visit our Facebook page, which is just at Central Valley Scholars, if you want to check out the recording afterwards, or also visit our website where it will be posted. Yeah. Alrighty. All right, so we're live on Facebook and just gonna give it a few more minutes. While we're waiting for more people to join, I just wanna let everyone know that the chat box is disabled for our webinars. However, if you have any comments or questions, either now or throughout the presentation, feel free to put them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screens. It should show up on a little black bar at the bottom, next to where it says participants and chat box and a couple other features. So any questions you have, of anything logistical or in regards to the presentation or questions for our speakers, please ask them throughout the presentation. We'd love to get to them, and it'll help give us an idea of what students are wondering and maybe kind of guide our hosts as they're speaking. So definitely drop those in the Q&A box. We'll also be answering questions at the end just to keep the presentation flowing and make sure that we are able to get through it in a timely fashion. But yeah, give us just a few more minutes while people join. Thank you so much. If you know anyone joining the Facebook Live, we will also be monitoring questions on there as well. So if you ever, if you decide you want to drop the Zoom and go to Facebook Live, if that's easier for you, we will still be able to communicate with you via that chat. Awesome. So we already have a question, just so that everyone knows in case it isn't clear. So now that we're doing a Facebook Live for this particular webinar, you'll be able to find the recording of it on our Facebook page, Central Valley Scholars. But if you want, you can also, within the week, very, very soon, just keep checking our website under our workshops, and all of our past workshop recordings will be on there as well if you want to check those out, along with resources that we think are helpful. If we have any questions at the end that aren't addressed right away or that we can't get to right away, we can also post additional resources there for you to find. And you can rewatch the webinars as many times as you need to. You can share it with friends, share it with family, whoever needs it. We are happy, to provide this ongoing resource to y'all. Awesome question. And then someone else asked if we can see you. So for privacy purposes, we make our settings so that y'all are muted and your cameras are off when you join the webinar. So that's why the Q&A box will be our primary source of communication. So no, we can't see you, and no, we can't hear you. So you don't have to worry about that. But alrighty, so it looks like it's 4:05 and everything on our Facebook Live is set up. We will definitely be checking it throughout the webinar. But yeah, thank you all so much for joining. This is the UC Application and Admissions webinar hosted by Central Valley Scholars and presented by Erica Sanchez, pronouns she, her, ella, the Assistant Director and Latinx Community Liaison from UC Berkeley, and Noe Garcia, he, him, pronouns, UCLA Bruin Ambassador. My name is Katya. I'm the Events Coordinator for Central Valley Scholars. Next slide. Awesome. So we have a lot of people joining us today. So I just want to make sure that we talk a little bit about who Central Valley Scholars is and what we do. We are a Central Valley nonprofit composed primarily of students. Most of us students are also from the Central Valley doing our undergraduate, and some of us will be graduating soon as well. We're from across the Central Valley. I personally am from Fresno County. We also have team members from different more rural regions of the Valley as well. And we, are working to create resources to serve, not to save, other students like us, other high school students, students of all ages who are, looking into pursuing higher education and trying to create more avenues for them through our workshops, which are public, our mentorships, which provide one-on-one help with college apps, financial aid, and different things. We also provide scholarships annually. This year, we were able to offer a number of different scholarships, including a first generation scholarship, an undocumented student scholarship, and a LGBTQ scholarship, which we're really proud of. And we're hoping to, again, have those scholarships open this upcoming year, along with some new other ones. So definitely sign up for our newsletter on our website if you're interested in learning more and in, getting the most up-to-date information about all of those things. Yeah, next slide. Alrighty, so again, this is our website. We do have a couple of upcoming workshops that I want to highlight just because they're very relevant to what we're going to be talking about today, and it's a great way to get some additional help and additional space to answer questions after this. So next weekend, the 21st, at the same time, from 4 to 5 p.m., we're going to be doing a transfer experience workshop hosted by students from UC Berkeley who are transfer students and who want to help you all. For anyone who is interested in exploring what it is to be a transfer student, how to go about that process, I highly recommend that you attend. You can RSVP now on this website, and I'll also send this either right after this or at the end so that you can just go there directly and register. Another webinar that we're going to be having is, and this one is super important, very, very relevant to everyone who's here today, is a pop-up workshop to help with college essay writing. So college essay writing, specifically helping with your personal insight questions for the UCs. So if you register for that webinar, you will be assigned a 30-minute time slot to come and get help from one of the Central Valley Scholars staff who are all undergraduate students currently. Getting help from us on how to, boost your personal insight questions, how to, fix any grammatical errors and things like that. We really want to help you all and make you feel, give you a space to and get any questions answered about your essays and make you feel confident in submitting them. Next slide. Alrighty, so this is going to be my last piece before I hand it over to our wonderful presenters. This is a land acknowledgement. It's the whole point of a land acknowledgement is to acknowledge that we're all, even in this virtual setting, all on different Indigenous territories that were colonized. And so I encourage you all to just for a second, close your eyes, take a deep breath, plant your feet on the ground, and just listen while I read this off to you all. I want to take a moment to acknowledge where we are, that the earth below our homes and below our feet is Indigenous territory and has belonged to and been tended to by the Indigenous peoples for hundreds of thousands of years. When white settlers arrived to what we otherwise know as the United States, they enacted genocide and theft of the land, labor, and resources, attempting to wipe out Indigenous communities entirely. It's important to remember and to acknowledge the land we're living on and to recognize our history and relationship to the ongoing legacy of colonization in the US, and to also recognize that the Indigenous people are still here and through resistance and resilience are still on the front lines struggling for land rights, collective liberation, and an end to white supremacy. I invite you to take a moment to think about your relationship to this land and to its history. Let's let those who have come before us in the struggle inform us on where we're going so that together we can reimagine and collectively build a world where we're all free. So yeah, again, a big part of land acknowledgements is also acknowledging that not only are we on Indigenous territory, but the struggles that we see today were started by Indigenous peoples, and a lot of that, we don't want to take credit for that, for work that's been done by them for thousands of years. So yeah, thank you all for participating in that. That is my final piece. For anyone who joined a little later, just going to reiterate one more time. The Q&A box at the bottom is the way that you'll be communicating with us. I'll try to answer as many questions as I can in between the presentation, but for the most part, all questions will be answered at the end of the presentation, but you can drop your questions at any point and we will try to get to them as soon as possible. I think that's it. My camera and audio will be off. I'm gonna go ahead and hand it off to our presenters so that they can introduce themselves. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you, Katia. So just again, my name is Erica Sanchez, she, her, ella pronouns. I am from the Bay Area. I've worked at UC Berkeley for the past 7.5 years. Also a proud Cal alum, go Bears. Graduated in the class of 2010 in major of comparative ethnic studies. Noe?
Hi, everyone. I'm Noel Garcia. I'm a third-year undergraduate student at UCLA. I work for Bruin Ambassadors and I've worked there these past 2 years. I'm from Bakersfield, California, and I'm majoring in, as I mentioned, public affairs. So thank you all for having me be here today.
Yeah, we're really excited to be doing this today. So the goals for this presentation are that we're going to first learn about the mission and the values of the University of California system, learn how COVID-19 has impacted the application, selecting campuses and majors to apply to, receive advice on how to fill out the UC application, in particular the extracurricular section and the PIQs, and then just some resources that are available for you all. All right, so the first one is the mission of the UC. So the distinctive mission of the university is to serve society as a center of higher learning, providing long-term societal benefits through transmitting advanced knowledge, discovering new knowledge, and functioning as an active working repository of organized knowledge. So some really great things that we do are the three main components, I should say, are that we teach, we do research, and we do public service. So those are going to be key foundational things to the entire UC system. All right, so application requirements. So hopefully you're familiar with some of these requirements. A through G courses, which you can absolutely find online. So A through G courses, we want a 3.0 UC GPA. The UC GPA is looking at your A through G courses in 10th and 11th grade. The personal insight questions, which we'll talk about. The SAT and ACT, as soon as, I think it was last week, we had the UCOP, University of California Office of the President, determined that no UC will consider the SAT or ACT in our admissions decisions or our scholarship decisions as well. Okay, so SAT, ACT will not be considered. All other exams will be considered though. So even if you submit an SAT or ACT score, we will not see it in our review of your application. And then lastly, community service and leadership. Although this isn't a requirement, it absolutely does help add value to an application, especially for more selective campuses like UCLA and UC Berkeley. So how has COVID-19 impacted the UC application? So for A through G courses, we do require those courses to be taken with an A letter grade. And with COVID-19, of course, a lot of classes had to turn to pass, no pass. So we will be accepting A through G courses completed with the pass, no pass option. The UC is really trying to determine how to take the courses in fall and spring. But if your school does not offer the option of getting a letter grade for some of these A through Gs, that is completely okay. And if you wanna, you'll wanna make sure to put that in the application, and we'll talk about where you can do that. All right, anything else you wanted to add here, Noah?
No, I think you covered it all.
All right. So let's go to how to pick a UC campus. So we are a system, we are sister campuses. So that means while we all have the same mission, we're all gonna be a little bit different. So how do you pick a UC campus? Think about the location. Each campus, we have a different community that we're kind of nestled in. Some are along the beaches, some are in more urban areas, some are more remote or rural. And so really thinking about where you're gonna go and how comfortable you're gonna feel with that location. The size of each campus will also vary. UCLA and UC Berkeley have the largest student populations, while Merced is a newest campus with the smallest population of students. Just kind of getting a sense for, are you going to prefer to be in a larger setting or a smaller setting? And then also doing like a vibe check. Each UC has a totally different vibe and personality. And I know it's really difficult to make it out to all the campuses. And some of you may have had the opportunity to travel to these campuses beforehand, but it's really important to kind of get the vibe of a campus and see if it's going to be a good fit for you as well. And lastly, looking at what majors are offered at the campuses and knowing if you know what you want to major in, it's really important to see if the colleges or universities you're applying to offer a major similar or the exact major that you do want, or has the variety of majors that you like to pick from. Sometimes students will apply to a campus and they assume that we kind of all have the same majors. Each UC is going to have some slight variations between the majors. There's going to be some that are across the campuses like psychology, but it's really going to vary. So it's really important that you do your research and see what majors we each offer. So Noah, how did you choose your UC?
So I definitely considered all of these different factors when applying to the UC. I did have access to a fee waiver, and so I was able to decide on 4 there. But one tip I would recommend for students is if you are accepted to the university that you're applying to, a lot of them have these welcome weekend events for you all to go. And so these are often great opportunities to try to visit and get to know most of the campus. Of course, you can still do this virtually. And for me, I think the vibe check was a big part of it. And going to these campuses, getting a vibe of how I feel there. In addition, along with majors and locations, considering the opportunities that are nearby your universities or campuses is going to be very important. We all have different paths and different career choices. And so that'll vary on where you go as well because of those opportunities that are just near your campus, locations to internships, volunteer opportunities, different anything that you consider in campuses. And so I took all of these factors into consideration and look at other smaller factors. So even though UCLA has the largest student population, we are one of the smallest campuses in terms of acreage and size. And so it'll be a very large population on a small campus. And so that's kind of little things that you can look at and see if you really want that school and want that university experience there.
Great, thank you for that. That's absolutely true. You can also do virtual tours right now with all the campuses. And a lot of us are doing workshops or pre-recorded things that you can check out on our social media or on our websites. So next, I did do a little bit of research. So each campus has a unique set of majors, and it's really important that you look at the majors at each individual campus, like I had mentioned. I provided a link here. It'll be in the recording, of course, but feel free to take a screenshot or just take a picture. All right, and then I have made a list of some of the more difficult majors to find that are a little more specialized or unique to each campus. So for Berkeley, business admin, MET, our biology and business, College of Chemistry as a whole. Berkeley is known for chemistry. We've discovered 16 elements on the periodic table of elements at UC Berkeley. Our energy engineering and sustainable environmental design are some of those. Davis, definitely agriculture, animal science, viticulture, and enology. Irvine has criminology, law and society, exercise sciences, game design, some really cool majors there. Merced recently added civil engineering. They're a growing campus. They're the fastest growing campus in the UC system. And then Riverside has entomology, and it's one of the top schools for entomology, journalism, liberal studies, and they also reserve seats in their medical school. So UC Riverside has a med school, and they reserve seats every year for students who are undergraduates at Riverside to be in their medical school program, which is a great advantage if you're interested in going into med school. And then we have Santa Barbara with hydraulic science and policy, and Santa Cruz has some awesome programs as well, including community studies, game design, educational justice and democracy. And then of course, I wanted to let Noah talk about UCLA's majors.
Yeah, UCLA has specialty majors in our School of Theater, Film, and Television, Public Affairs, and School of Nursing. Particularly with Theater, Film, and Television and Nursing, those are smaller schools, but the great benefit of that for you all in applying to these schools is that because they're small populations within that school, you do get that small school experience while also getting that hands-on, like that one-on-one relationship with your professors and faculty there who are all either practicing within nursing or practicing within theater, film, and television. Additionally, public affairs is a recent major that was added to UCLA 3 years ago during my first year, actually, and has a focus on public policy and includes classes from the School of Public Affairs. And so these are some specialty majors that UCLA has and are adding new majors every year. Additionally, with all these other UCs that are adding new majors every single year for you all to pursue.
Right, and just a couple things to note, some of these majors are highly selective. So like the theater program at UCLA, MET at Berkeley, as well as the nursing programs, both at Irvine and LA, have about 50 spots and about 2,000 applicants. So they're highly selective. This isn't to discourage you, but just so that you know, nursing is gonna be quite a selective major to apply to. Across the public school 4 years in California, it can be quite a challenge. So make sure you do some thorough research and look for some lots of opportunities so that you can apply widely. Okay, so when you're picking remember when you're picking a major, you're not picking your career necessarily. So you want to make sure that you're learning something that you're passionate about. So for me, I'll give you a little bit of my story and then I'll hand it off to Noe. But for me, I went into UC Berkeley because I believed in the social justice, the challenging of the status quo, and I wanted to be a lawyer for the ACLU. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to go to Berkeley and I have to major in political science because if you want to go to law school, political science, it makes sense. And when I took classes in poli-sci at Berkeley, I was not feeling it. The vibe check was not there for me for poli-sci. And I quickly fell in love with ethnic studies. And so I switched my major to ethnic studies. And I didn't realize that you can do most careers with whatever major you do, because it's not teaching you how to do a job when you go to university. They're teaching you how to think critically, how to write, how to do research, and really giving you those critical tools that you need in order to take information in and make up your own mind about things as well. And so for me, once I went to ethnic studies, it was a perfect fit because trust me, if you don't like what you're learning about, those years in college that you spend are going to be very painful, long, and difficult because there's a lot of reading and research involved. So that's a little bit of my experience. Noah, how about you?
Yeah, no, I would echo what you said, and really your major will not define your career. Of course, there are some fields that if you want to go into medicine, going into a STEM route will kind of make that easier on you. But even if you do want to go into a STEM field, a science, technology, engineering, or math field, you can still pursue other majors while in undergrad. Of course, it really is just dependent on your own situation. For me, I did switch around a lot and actually came in as a biology major to UCLA and ended up doing a full 180 and switching to public affairs, kind of the opposite end of that spectrum, because I realized that while in undergrad, it's not really what I wanted to be reading and doing my work on, spending hours in that experience. And one tip I have for you all, of course, once you're at your campus, is really start looking at what your upper division courses will look like within that major. A lot of your beginner courses might be the same or might have a lot of overlap with other majors, but your upper division classes, so the classes you'll be focusing on maybe at the end of your second, third, and fourth year, that can really help define what your major will actually look like in the future. And that way you can kind of decide if you do want to pursue that and you do want to put in your time and effort into that study.
That's great. Thank you so much. Because, you know, the first step to applying to university, especially to a UC, is picking which campuses you want to receive your application and which majors you want at each campus, right? And like Noah said, we do have a fee waiver. Each campus has a fee to apply to it, but if you have free reduced lunch, you're likely going to qualify for a fee waiver. And so just keep that in mind. You get 4 free UCs to apply to. All right, so filling out the application, just wanted to cover a few things here. So we have FERPA, which are federal privacy right. It's a federal privacy act that essentially means whatever you all share in your application, we have to protect, and we will not share it with anyone, including the federal government, the IRS. So just to let you all know this, in case you do want to reveal something in the application about your status, maybe a job that you may have worked that you weren't getting paid, you were getting paid under the table, so to speak. Those things are okay to mention in the application, and we won't release that information. So fee waivers, like I had mentioned, each campus is $70 to apply to, but with a fee waiver, again, you get 4 free UC campuses. So use those wisely. This also, the fee waiver does apply to students who have AB 540 status. So if you are identified as AB 540, you can also obtain a fee waiver. And for students who are AB 540, DACA, documented, like undocumented, we do have resources for students on how to fill out the application. So if you are considered any of these things, make sure you're checking out the undocumented student website resources from UCOP, from University of California. And we'll make sure that gets dropped in the chat. And when you're selecting your major at the UCs, every UC allows you to pick an alternate major. So primary major, so let's say I picked poli-sci as my first pick, and then my second pick, just in case, is my backup. I could put anthropology, biology, astrophysics, what have you. You can do that at every university, at every UC except for Berkeley. So you only get one choice at Berkeley. Something to keep in mind. And you want to make sure you're including all information, all coursework that you've taken. That's all going to be really important.
Yeah, and I would add in one thing with selecting UCs and major is really, again, look into that alternate major option. UCLA also does not consider an alternate choice if you're applying within our College of Letters and Science. Equally within other colleges, whether that's engineering, theater, film, and television, we often won't consider an alternate choice. So just keep in mind on that kind of UC and then which major do. I know UC Santa Barbara does allow you to kind of do an alternate major within the School of Engineering and then the School of College of Letters and Science. And that's one thing that I kind of took advantage of to get 2 shots into UCSB. So just kind of research each campus that you're interested in and see how they do their alternate major selection.
That's a great tip. And also UC San Diego, shout out to UC San Diego because they have a 6 or 7 college system now. And you definitely need to do a little bit or a lot of research before applying to San Diego and figuring that out because their colleges are just listed a lot differently. So yeah, make sure you're including all of this information, super critical. And I love to see that there's tons of questions coming in, keep them coming and we'll answer those at the end. Okay, so at UC, and this is really geared towards freshmen, I guess I should have said that early on. This is really geared towards freshman admission. And if you are considering transfer, I highly encourage you to check out both of our websites. We definitely have presentations for transfers and also more information. But looking, and this is applicable to transfers here as well, though, I do want to point that out. When we're doing application review, when we're looking over these applications, UC uses a comprehensive review. UC Berkeley and UCLA use a holistic review, more specifically. So for us, we are looking at your GPA and whatever test scores you have, not the SAT or ACT though, other test scores. We're looking at those numbers, but we're wanting to see beyond just the numbers, right? We're not just wanting to like make an index of like this GPA plus this test score equals admitted. We don't do that. So it's really important to keep in mind the things that are going in your extracurricular section and in your PIQs are going to be critical to really helping paint a picture of where you're coming from and who you are. So the extracurricular section really answers the what you do. It's the what you do, it's a factual information, precise language, short, it doesn't need to be complete sentences. And it really sets the groundwork for something you may want to talk about in the PIQs. Okay, so really to the point, succinct, and you have a very short amount of space to write about these different activities. And we'll go into some examples of that. Whereas the personal insight questions really answers the why you do it, why it's important to you, does not need to be formal either. We don't call our personal insight questions essays for a reason because they're not essays. It's not a writing sample. We're not judging your grammar and spelling. We really want to hear your voice because this takes the place of an interview. So it's more important to me that when I read your application, I can hear who you are and I can like imagine you there with me, as opposed to reading a bunch of words that you might have gotten from a thesaurus, right? So I don't want to hear what you think I want to hear. I really just want to hear your authentic voice. That's going to be the most important thing. And so using personal anecdotes, that'll really help make an application stand out when you're speaking about something that's really unique to you. And again, drawing from personal experiences and really elaborating on more information from the extracurricular section, which is EC for short. So we are going to get all that basic information. We don't want you to relist everything out, one by one in the PIQs. This is where you can dive deep and really give us more information about those different activities.
Yeah, and additionally within the extracurricular activities and the descriptions of that, try to be specific if you can within your activities. You're going to be applying with so many other students, and so there's going to be a lot of variations in your activities. And so the more specific you are, the better that the admission officer can understand what you did within that club. Again, it's not a long response for your descriptions of your activities, but again, if you can answer what you do in specific words, it can help, again, the admission officer understand what you did within that extracurricular and kind of what you spend your time doing.
So we're going to go over these different sections. And thank you so much, Noah, because what's really important for me is, especially for students from the Central Valley, we need more representation, right, of students from the Central Valley going into the UC schools. And I know in particular, UC Berkeley, we love to see our Central Valley students there. So how do we write about extracurricular sections? So the title of the extracurricular, if you're doing activities and clubs, you want to make sure you write out the full name of your activity, and then you can put the abbreviation. So I put the example here, Future Farmers of America, FFA. So as a person who's from the Bay Area, I had not been familiar with FFA until I had the Central Valley as a territory. And so you really don't want to assume that whoever's reading your application knows what you're talking about. Like there's a lot of abbreviations that mean a lot of different things. So make sure that you're spelling it out at least the first time, and then you can use the abbreviation after. The other thing we ask you for is time. So we're asking you how many hours a week and how many weeks a year and what grade levels you were doing certain activities. So it's really important to put rough estimates, and it doesn't have to be precise exact. So I don't want you to sit there with a calculator and like trying to calculate up like every single thing. Roughly estimate, does your team or group meet once a week for an hour? That's 1 hour a week, 30 hours, 30 weeks a year, something like that, right? But it's also common that some activities in programming will take up more time. So I put the example here, maybe you're an ASB, the Associated Student Body, and you're the secretary, but you also do prom committee. And prom committee is just 2 months out of the year, but you have way more hours during those 2 months. You can put ASB secretary, and then if you have space, then below it, you can put prom committee director and say, as ASB secretary, I had to do prom and list that out. So maybe ASB is normally 5 hours a week, but prom committee, it turns into 10 or 15. So that way you're really covering those differences, right? So that's one way to kind of get around that when there's different hours. And on the description part, really focus on how and why you participated in this activity. Avoid describing the activity, true life story. I've literally read applications where it'll say soccer and the description is a sport where you can't use your hands and you have to get a ball between 2 goalposts. Like that's too literal. Like I want to know what you did, right? So if you are in a sport or activity, really focus again on what you did. And you'll see here these points. Let us know about these activities and clubs. Was it a large, well-funded club? Was it a small and up-and-coming club that you had to revive? So really think about what's important about this, because we might all have very similar clubs. Like you might have a Spanish club at your school, and I had one at mine, right? But at my school, maybe it was like a small group kind of thing, and at your school, it's like a huge, well-defined machine, and like you have to apply to be a part of the club or something. Like I don't really know how it functions unless you tell me. So if there's something significant about it, put it in the description as well. And if you held an officer position, were you elected by your peers? Were you appointed by a faculty? And then what responsibilities did you have for each position? So those are some things that I'm highlighting in particular for activities and clubs. And then we have a few more to go through. Okay, so here's an example of an extracurricular activity. And we have 2 examples here. So the name of the activity, this is the first example a person puts in the application. They named it FFA, what they did, went to meetings, participated in competitions, learned about working on a farm, when you did it, 9th and 10th grade, and time you spent 3 hours a week, 35 weeks a year. Okay, so that's one example. And the second example, this is like the more turned up version of it, if you will. So the name of the activity, they put Future Farmers of America, FFA, so they did the abbreviation after. What you did, president, 12, that means you were president in the 12th grade. Participated in weekly meetings at school, then led meetings as president in my senior year, California FFA officer, raised and presented a pig during my senior year. So really giving a lot of information, because I know in particular for something like FFA and other programs as well, there might be one umbrella group, but then there's a lot of things that you can do within it. And so if you didn't have space to separate these out, put that there. Maybe raising a pig was like something you did that took a lot of time. You could put FFA as one thing, the club or the class, and then you could do raising an animal or, you know, whatever else you did as part of FFA, and separating it out, because it's really important that you take up all the space in the application that you can, all right, fill everything up. So we see here that the student here in the second example is taking more advantage of the space available to them. That's going to be crucial.
Yeah, and I would echo what Erica said in splitting up the activities if possible. You really want to make sure that you're valuing your time that you're putting into these events, into these extracurricular activities in high school, because this is all time that you have put into it, and you want to make sure that it gets recognized on the application, that it gets recognized to your reader. So just make sure that you're always trying to value your time and what you've put into it during high school. And so if possible to split it up, then I strongly encourage that as well. And always make sure you talk about what you did individually. Of course, it's always good to talk about what the club did, but knowing what the club did doesn't always really show the reader what you did within that club. So always have that kind of focus of what you specifically did, while also still including a little bit of what the club did overall.
Great. All right, so now looking at sports or competitive academic activities. So same thing here, indicate if the sport was for the school, was it for a league? So like club soccer versus like soccer that you play for your high school, as an example. Again, roughly estimate how often you participate, hours a week, weeks a year. Really important, especially in the Central Valley, is if you have to travel to compete, let us know, right? Because sometimes if you're especially in a more rural area, you might have to go an hour or longer or further away to play teams. So letting us know how much time you're spending traveling, and if that takes you away from class, did that impact your grades? Did you know, does that take away from other duties that you have to do, right? So be really detailed with that. And in the description, what level did you or your team compete? Was it local, regional, state, national, international? Did you travel in order to compete? And if you were captain or team officer, letting us know again, were you elected by peers? So did your team all vote for you? Were you selected by the coach? What were your responsibilities? And how many teammates did you oversee? So for example, soccer team captain, 12th grade, oversaw a team of 30 students or players, had to run drills twice a week during the season, once a week on off season. Like give me the stats, give me the numbers, right? So like sit down and really kind of do the math and figure it out, because the more details you provide to us, the better. Then we get a better idea of what you did. Anything to add here?
Yeah, I'd also add with sports, and this goes with any activity, is try to find maybe other roles that you took upon yourself that you can include in the description. I know within my sports teams, I kind of sometimes help tutor other students within my team when we had to go to tutoring hours. Or I know there was other students in our team that kind of served as like the morale booster within our group. I'm trying to find those roles that you might have played that you can include in the description to show kind of how you contributed to the sport beyond just playing that sport. So try to find those little things that you may have done and that you may have been known as within the team, and that's how you help move the activity forward.
For sure. And also like include things if it's really specific to your town, especially in a smaller town. Like if you are the quarterback for your team and that's like a huge deal, let us know that. Like whatever is important to you, we need to know, because it's not always the same across the board, right? So don't assume that we know what the culture is of sports or clubs or whatever it is at your school. Okay. So here's an example of an award. Okay. Noah, would you mind walking through this first one?
Yeah, so in the first one, they received the Soaring Eagle Award. It was a school recognition and it was an academic award. They received it in 11th grade and were selected by Miss Jones. And that was the requirement for the award. And to complete it, they had to go to class and pay attention. So I don't really know much about what the student actually did and who Miss Jones is for the award.
Awesome. And now can you read the other version here?
So the second version, they received the Soaring Eagle Award at the school level. It was an academic award and they received it in 11th grade. The Soaring Eagle Award is only given to one student per academic year and was selected by the English department. To get the Soaring Eagle Award, they had to receive a 3.8 minimum GPA, nominated by the English teacher, submitted a 500-word essay, and then were selected by the school district. So they really had to put a lot more work and effort into receiving the Soaring Eagle Award. And really, there were only one award per student or for the entire academic year. So that does show a lot of work that the student had to put in compared to their other classmates.
Great. Yeah. So again, when you're winning an award too, if you can ask the organizer, like, hey, how many people applied for this award, or how many people are considered? Really kind of doing some work and digging up any kind of quantifiable factors for us is really helpful. And it's really helpful to know, is this from the department, for the school, for the district, for the region, the county? Like, let us know, whatever that is. And yeah, avoid saying like naming a teacher, for example, because we don't know who your teachers are, but you can say by an English teacher, right? Or a math teacher or a coach, etc. Let us know who these folks are, but the name is not as important necessarily. Okay, so non-traditional forms of leadership, crucial here. A lot of folks, when they think of leadership, you have to be the captain, CEO, president, of a different club or organization, but there's lots of ways to show leadership. So it doesn't have to be formal. And I put an example here: childcare for siblings, cousins, nieces, nephews, etc. And I use this as an example because I have 3 brothers and one's a little brother, and I have no sisters. I am Chicana. And so when I was in high school, who was expected to come home right after school and take care of their little brother? It was going to be me, right? So then that really limits to what I have access to at my high school. So even though my high school has a ton of sports, like a really great choir program, etc., it wasn't really going to be something that I can participate in because it required a lot of after school or weekend participation that I was not going to be able to do. So this is that level of letting us know where you're really coming from. Because again, your school can be really well resourced, but if you don't have access to it because you either have responsibilities at home, maybe your parents are super strict and say, nope, you're just not going to do that because I want you home right away. Letting us know that full picture, right? So keep that in mind. Roughly estimate how often you participated. Let's stick with my example. Let's say I get home from school every day and for 2 hours I have to watch my little brother, right? So that's 2 hours, 5 times a week. That's 10 hours a week. And if it's the whole school year, that's about 30, 32 weeks out of the year. All right, so now I'm putting in 5 hours a week, 32 weeks out of the year. And that's assuming I have weekends off, right? So really sit there and kind of do it for yourself. And it may not be precise. Like some days it might be an hour, some days it might be 3 hours, like estimated at 2. And I get it, there might be days where, you know, you don't have to do it. And I think sometimes students get in their head like, well, if I didn't do it every single day, just do your best, right? Just estimate the best possible way you can. Be really detailed in why this is being included in your EC. Consider why this responsibility became yours. Okay, so if you do have to do childcare for family at home, is it because you have a sibling or parent or grandparent who just needs it? Sometimes you have nieces or nephews and your sibling has to go to work, so it falls on you, right? Like really paint that picture for us and what's going on. So non-traditional forms of leadership are also super important. It's an emotional form of labor as well. So again, really taking that into consideration. And oftentimes these things are kind of normalized, right? Well, like everyone and all my friends, we have to watch our younger siblings. It may be normal for you, but it's not normal across the board. And you want to make sure you're letting us know what those responsibilities are. Do you have any other forms of non-traditional leadership, Noah, that you wanted to highlight? Or
I think you covered it great. I think this again just goes for other forms of non-traditional leadership. And again, it goes back to just valuing your time and kind of what you've dedicated your time to throughout the school year. So this is a really great way to show the schools that you're applying to what you spent your time doing. And that way there's no kind of gaps of what you've done.
cool. All right, so here's an example, caring for nieces, nephews. My older sister has 2 kids, 4 and 6 years old. I drive them to from school, prepare their dinner, help with homework, and prepare snacks. My sister comes home around 6, and that's when I can begin my homework. This means I cannot participate in activities or 0 period classes. All right, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, 20 hours per week, 45 weeks out of the year. Right, so this is an example of how to quantify that. And so again, be as detailed as you would like in this application, whatever you feel comfortable disclosing. We're again, not here to judge your family or you. We just want to know what your context is, right? So we want to know where you're all coming from.
And not only with being in going this leadership route, right? It's not just that you're saying why you couldn't participate, but you do learn skills from taking care of your older sister's kids. It takes a lot of responsibility, a lot of time commitment, a lot of emotional capacity to really do this while being in school as well, and balancing everything else that you're doing. And so it's not just you saying that you can't participate in after school activities or 0 period classes. It's also you showing that you have this responsibility, these skills that you've learned of taking care of them. And this goes for other forms of non-traditional leadership. Whatever you're putting your time into, you are putting in work in as well. It may not be obvious, but you definitely are putting in work in whatever you put your time into.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of responsibility that goes here. I mean, I'm learning from this that the student has great time management skills, right? So really highlighting those things. And like Katia said in the chat, everyone's experience is valid and valuable. You just have to share it with us so that we know. All right. So this next one is work. And again, I just wanted to reiterate FERPA, Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. So we do not report to the IRS. Work can be listed even if it's paid under the table. If you worked as a young minor, make sure to clarify that. Sometimes I see folks are hesitant to put that they worked before the age of 16, you know, because of child labor laws and whatever. But again, just let us know what your truth and your reality is so that we understand where you're coming from. So it doesn't have to be a formal title. For example, you could be a crew member, shift leader, etc. Again, rough estimate, it does allow you to put a difference in time between the school year and the summer. So if you are working during the school year, but it's a reduced amount of time, that's fine. And then maybe full-time in the summer, you can make that distinction. The description, make sure to be detailed. If there were particular hardships with the job, for example, there's a lot of students who do work in the fields, right? It's 100-degree plus weather in the summer if you're working in the fields. It's very difficult, right? You have to wear clothing that protects you from the sulfur and all these other pests. Like a lot of things go into that. What's the pay rate? How difficult is the work? And for some of you, maybe you have to work full time in the summer. It's not an option, right? Like you just got to do it to support your family. And letting us know that is so that we understand what kind of responsibilities you have and how you're contributing. That's a form of leadership as well, right? When you're able to work, even if it's just you get to keep your money, but you're paying for your food, your books, maybe you're paying for your siblings to get lunch at school, whatever that looks like, however you participate and contribute, that's valuable. And we want to hear about it. So make sure you're including everything in your application, all types of jobs. It could even be if you're helping your mom or dad, you know, like if they're selling tamales or they have a convenience store and you're not necessarily getting paid for it either, then you still want to put that on there, right? Like if your dad, like there was that guy who was selling elotes at Santa Barbara and then like the kid got him on Venmo and then he blew up. He had like social media and everything. That's like entrepreneurial, right? If you have family who's doing side hustles like that, or that's their main hustle, like that's important that you're putting that in the application so that we know like how you're helping out in that form of like leadership. And then again, we want to know how you're using your earnings. That could be, are you helping meet the financial needs of your family? I had a student at my high school that sold candy bars on campus to students because his family was close to losing their home and he earned enough money to pay off the rest of the mortgage. Like that's an extreme example, right? But I'm just saying like there's lots of ways to show how you're helping your family out financially, where you're just taking off some burden from your parents, supplementing your allowance, etc. Right? So all of these things are important. Anything you want to add here, Noah?
No, just make sure that if you have worked and it's kind of under the table again, if it's like you babysat, you kind of did a job for someone in your street and they pay you weekly for it, include those things as well. It is work, and so it's perfectly fine to include those things.
Awesome. All right, so I did use a fieldwork example here. So for a student who works in the fields, work with their parents, job responsibility. Every summer since 6th grade, I've worked in the fields with my parents. We wake up at 4 a.m. to get to work by sunrise and work until 6 p.m. This is often in 100+ degree weather. Wildfires have impacted the air quality. Starting in 11th grade, I worked on Saturdays to help more. So this is just an example to pull up, right? And there's lots of different ways to have work experience. And I did, the wildfires have actually impacted, I'm sure all y'all know, right? Like for a few years. And something else to note is with COVID-19, we know that things are switching and responsibilities at home might have to switch as well. So if you do have work experience, for example, with COVID-19, are your parents essential workers and working more, and you have to stay at home and take care of your siblings and do their online schooling with them? Or do you have to take them to a parking lot to get Wi-Fi so that you can all do online learning together? Or maybe your parents are like, you're not staying home because I see you on the computer. That's not real schoolwork. We're going to go work and get more money. Or maybe you're documented, your family's not, and you're working more hours at a Target, a Walmart, or whatever to bring more funds into the family. Letting us know that is also going to be really key and important. And also, if you're not super impacted by COVID-19, maybe you don't have those same barriers, that's okay too. Don't feel like you can't write about COVID-19. What we don't want is we don't need you to write about COVID-19 on the macro level and explain it to us because we understand on a macro level. What I want to know about is on a micro level, on an individual level, how has it impacted you directly? If it has impacted you, letting us know what that looks like. How has your day-to-day changed? How has your educational opportunities changed? Are you no longer participating in a club and you can't work anymore? You're working more. That's really how we want to hear about COVID-19. Now, I don't want to read about COVID-19 conspiracy theories or like a dramatic like novel kind of written about COVID-19, like how it swept the planet and whatever. We really want to focus again on how it's impacted you as a person, potentially your community as well. And maybe if you've been working to help your community out in some kind of way, Those are things we want to hear about. We absolutely do want to hear about it if you want to write about it. Okay. All right, so this is just to show again that you can do the difference, like during the summer, 50 hours a week, and during the school year, 10 hours a week. During the summer, 50 hours a week. This is a screen grab from the application itself. So this is how you can make that distinction. This is an example, not necessarily a literal one. All the UCs kind of read applications a little differently in terms of how it looks, but this is how I would see someone's extracurricular section, right? So I'm seeing here someone was in the ASB, Associate Student Body, Army JROTC, the Student Advisory Board, Captain, and a Science and Engineering Club. Again, we can see the levels they were in there, how many hours a week, how many weeks a year, and then we see their description as well. Okay, so this is just one way that it could be seen laid out on an application. So again, there's a visual component to this, and that's why I'm saying it's really crucial to fill up as many of the EC boxes as possible. But we are focusing on high school, so things that happen 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade. All right, and then we're gonna close up with the personal insight questions. And so after this slide, then we'll get to some of the Q&A. Thank you again for submitting those questions. Overall, the personal insight questions, again, is an opportunity for you to introduce yourself to the people reading your application. All right, so how do you do it in your own words? Think about as if I were to be in an elevator with you and I asked you one of these questions, and how would you answer them? But you have time to practice though, so don't freak out, right? Like, you get to think about it. I want to hear your voice. So it's really an opportunity to discuss your life experiences, which may include things like challenges, passions, achievements. So for some of you, it's going to be having to challenge your parents. Maybe you really want to be an artist and your parents are like, no, you're going to be a doctor. And that's not your vibe at all. Maybe it's something that happened from when you were little. And sometimes people ask this question, can I write about something that happened when I was little? You can, but it needs to relate to who you are today in a tangible way. Okay, so if something happened, you won an award or something like that, and it continues to impact you to this day, and you have a way to show, like, you can show us that, that's okay. But it really needs to focus on high school in particular. It also is a way for providing deeper context for your application. So I may see your grades and your test scores or whatever, right? But I don't know the story behind them. So an example is if you get straight A's, and I was one of these students that I got straight A's, right? And everyone just thought, oh, it's so easy for you, Erica. Like, you're just really smart, you get straight A's. But not everyone knew what was going on behind the scenes, right? So maybe I got straight A's, but my sophomore year, the spring semester was a particularly difficult challenge for me. And if I don't talk about what that challenge was, then it's not going to show up, right? And it could be a number of things. It could be that maybe you were moving because you had to get a new place to live. You were couch surfing with family. It could be that you got an illness or a parent got an illness that took a lot of time and emotional, mental labor for you. So talking about what's going on behind the scenes helps bring to life like what was going on in your transcript. And sometimes students, the grades do dip because those things are not controllable and it does impact your academics. But this is a space for you to let us know about those things is in the PIQs, and letting us know about how, if you get knocked down, how do you pick yourself up? Or sometimes there's challenges that you can't overcome because they're outside of your control. So how do you deal with a problem day to day, right? Because there's just no overcoming it. You just have to deal with it. There's some things you can't change. It's just important for us to know that grit that you all have, because when you go to college, no matter where you go to college, it's going to be difficult. There is going to be a transition, right? And we'll definitely ask Noah about his transition from Bakersfield to UCLA as well. But this, again, this is an opportunity to tell us your truth, to tell us your story. And we're not here to feel sorry for anyone. We want to hear about what amazing things you've accomplished, right? It's here, hopefully, that you can be empowered to share your story. And when I read your essays, your personal insight question responses, I should say, I just want to get to know who you are. I want to know what makes you amazing. I want to know why you're a dope person. Like, let me know those things and make it difficult for me to say no, right? Because the chances are, if you're from the Southern Central Valley, I'm probably going to read your application. All right, so definitely keep that in mind. We're real people reading your applications, And so you just got to give us that information and we can make a decision from there. So those are going to be some key things, and you'll see the rest here on the slide. Noah, do you have anything to add to this particular slide here?
Yeah, and one thing that is on the slide is it takes the place of an interview. These PIQs do take place of an interview. The UC generally, unless you're applying to specific specialty schools, won't give you an interview or will accept letters of recommendation from you. So these PIQs are really the only way to get to know who you are. And additionally, I mean, I think Erica covered it perfectly, and I think hopefully you all felt inspired to write your PIQs after she spoke. But it really is not about, you don't have to have like created a cure for a rare disease to write on your PIQs. You don't have to have done something, you know, crazy nationally to write about your PIQs. If you created one event in your high school that really changed who you are, helped your community shape who you become, that's something you can write about in your PIQs. There's 8 different questions, and they all have equal value. And so the reason why there's 8 options is for you all to find which ones you do want to answer and which ones you do want to tackle. So make sure you find the 4 PIQs that you really think best reflect who you are and that you're most passionate about answering. And that's the best way you can give insight on yourself to these readers.
Absolutely. And I think one last bit of tip or advice, I guess, on the PIQs. I see a lot of students who pick 4 PIQs that they can answer very literally, because you're used to, like in English class, I say, look at the prompt, break it down, and like define your terms and answer all parts of the prompt. This is really not an essay for a school, right? This is more, don't worry about the questions. Don't let the questions drive what you tell me. Really just sit there and think, what are 4 things I want the admissions office to know about me? What are 4 moments or 4 challenges or 4 accomplishments? Like, what are the things that you want me to know about you? And then you can put your response to kind of mold and fit whatever PIQs you have. And even if you don't directly answer the PIQ, that doesn't count against you. We're not here to see how well you answer a prompt. We want to know what context, what information, what can I learn about this student as a person? That's the main priority of those PIQs. So again, if you're really worried, like, oh my God, is this answering the prompt correctly? Focus more so on what am I going to learn from it, from you, right? Like by reading that. That's the key, most important part of the PIQs. Okay, let's see. Now we're at the questions portion. So I do see we have some questions that are in the Q&A. Katia, did you want to bring some to our attention, I guess?
Yes, we have a lot of questions. A lot of them are fairly similar or sort of in relation to the same things. And I think I'll start with some of the ones that I think will benefit the broader audience. So here's a couple. Okay, here it is. So someone asked, under the test score section, should we include AP exams that we did not pass? And then either one of y'all or both can answer this.
Yeah, you can put those down. It doesn't count against you. So when we're reading applications, I know for Berkeley, we're trying to, like, you're giving us building blocks and we're trying to build till we get to, like, you know, where we recommend yes, that you be admitted, but we'll never take away a block. So we'll be like, oh, great grades, a lot of rigor. Oh, your AP exam, you didn't pass. We're not gonna like remove a block. We're just gonna stay static. Does that make sense? So it's okay. I would include it. Letting us know that you attempted it shows us something, right? And so I would see it as more value added rather than just nothing, or it will never take away though when we're reading your application.
I'll second Erica that I recommend if you took it, even if you did not pass it, to include it. But again, it really is a decision of how comfortable you feel. And similar with UCLA, we won't ever take away points for something in your application. It just won't be, again, like a value added or a block added.
That is super good to know. Thank you. Someone else asked, if we mentioned an extracurricular in the extracurricular section, should we write about it in the personal insight question section, or write about something else noteworthy in order to save word count? Your thoughts?
Yeah, so if you did, for example, let's say you were a part of journalism or Spanish club, right? So you're in Spanish club and you write about it. Maybe there was a huge fundraiser that you helped organize. Then you can really dive into what it was like to organize that fundraiser, what things you learned from it. Like, let us know why that was meaningful for you in the PIQs. So it's not about relisting what you already put in the ECs. It's about expanding now and kind of diving deeper in the PIQs. Because again, we're going to read the ECs. Like we have all that information. You don't have to repeat that same information.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so let me see. I know someone asked a question that was about sort of whether or not the UCs communicate with one another, and I'm trying to find it. Or actually, here's a better question. So is it bad to be undeclared while applying to the UCs? And would it be better to be a determined major to put down, you know, when applying? How do admissions officers view undecided applicants? Yeah, what are your thoughts?
So that's great. So if you're applying to the UC, I believe for all of them, maybe except with the exception of Santa Cruz, you have to apply to at least one of the colleges within a UC. Okay, so every UC is going to have colleges that live within it, and it's just where the majors are going to be housed. So again, do a little bit of research on each campus. We all have presentations that we're doing daily, or like not daily, but like constantly throughout the week. So just check in with the different campuses, see if they have a presentation or a guide for you. But it doesn't necessarily count against you. It's going to vary though, right? Like, so if you apply to Berkeley, you can't apply at Berkeley undeclared. It would be College of Letters and Science, College of Engineering, etc. And some of our colleges don't even admit to major, we just admit to the college. So you don't even have to worry about undeclared, declared. Those can be really tricky. So just again, make sure to check in with each UC and see how it would impact you at each campus. And then I really did quickly want to touch, like I know this always comes up all the time. Do UCLA and UC Berkeley in particular, our two campuses, do y'all talk to each other about your admissions decisions? Emphatically, the answer is no. We literally do not have the time to be like, oh, hey, what's up, Scott, who's the admissions rep for Central Valley in LA? What did you decide on this student? Because I'm thinking about admitting them, but we can't have them at both UCs. Like, that's not what's happening. We literally don't have time to talk to each other about decisions, and it doesn't matter. We're not going to say, oh, well, they can only get into one or two schools. What does happen sometimes is you apply to a UC, and I think a lot of people think Berkeley and LA are the most selective. We are, but if you apply to Berkeley and to one of our less selective programs, and you apply to Davis and one of their more selective programs, there's a chance you'll get into Berkeley but not Davis, or into LA and not Irvine. So really, it can vary between the major and the UCs. It's not that we talk to each other though.
Awesome, thank you. So someone else had asked how you recommend listing extracurricular activities. Should it be by type of activity or by relevance?
It's really up to you. You can put in whatever order you want. And then I believe, at least when our campus receives information, we just organize it by type. And so we'll see like awards first maybe, and then activities, or but it doesn't matter as long as you put them in there. That's the important thing. I believe each campus will sort it out.
Awesome, thank you. Okay. So someone asked, even if they don't take official lessons, but we dedicate time to learning something, would that count as an extracurricular? If so, is it okay to write about it in our personal insight questions? Specifically the one that asks about talents.
Yeah, absolutely. If you have a talent or something that you've worked on outside of school, letting us know about that. Maybe you took Coursera courses, or whatever it is that you self-taught. Absolutely, you can write about it and let us know why you're so passionate about it. Maybe why you had to teach yourself as opposed to going to a professional. Maybe there weren't funds, or maybe your parents didn't approve of it. Whatever it is, right? You can let us know about that.
Awesome, thank you. We have a couple questions here as well in regards, and I think they might have been addressed early in the presentation, but I want to revisit them, is how our SAT and ACT scores, or if our SAT and ACT scores are not great, would you recommend adding them? So if you could clarify that. And someone else asked, I'm a second year in high school. How will the SAT and ACT requirements change in 2 years? If you have any projections, students seem like they would love to hear them.
Yeah, so SAT, ACT, again, we will not consider those scores. So even if you enter them, we won't see them anywhere in the application process, and our application does double as a scholarship application. So we won't look at it either way. So write them in or don't, we won't see them. And then what was the second question, sorry? Or second
Someone
part?
asked if, yes, so someone else asked if if you have any ideas on how SAT and ACT requirements might change in future years, if there is any chance of change, or if the UCs are all set on this being test free.
Yeah, we're going test free at least through 4 years. And then I believe at 4 years, we're going to revisit it and potentially have another exam, but that's likely, as far as you need to know, for the next 4 years, SATs and ACTs will not be required. We will be test blind for the next 4 years for certain as the UC system.
Awesome, thank you. And okay, so we already answered this one. Okay, so someone asked, if we pass the language subject test, is it okay not to take the foreign language? Will UCs accept this? So I think that is in regards to like specific AP exams that people might have taken.
So if you're, for example, if you're trying to fulfill LOTE, the subject E requirement. So if you take a language subject test and passes, then you technically do meet that. You're validating the LOTE requirement. So you wouldn't have to necessarily take it in terms of A through G. And then if you, for example, take like AP French or AP Spanish and get a credit bearing score of 3 or higher, when you get to the UC that you want to go to or that you go to, they can choose to have you not have to fulfill the language requirement at that campus. It's just going to depend on your major, which UC you go to, but getting a score that's passing on a subject exam will also clear the LOTE for A through G.
Awesome, thank you. Someone else asked in regards to majors, if you get into a college on one major, can you change your major as you please once you get in, or is there a catch? And maybe if you want to touch specifically on what that might look like at Berkeley and UCLA.
Yeah, that's going to vary by campus. And so for UC Berkeley, if you're applying, if you want to attend the College of Engineering or the College of Chemistry, you have to apply to it. It is very, very rare that a student will be able to transfer into College of Engineering or Chemistry that did not apply to one of those two. So a lot of students will see, and if you do look, the data shows it's a higher admit rate for College of Letters and Science, for example, where it's lower for engineering. Again, if you really want to go to engineering, apply to engineering, but I wouldn't bank on it. Otherwise, it's really simple to change your major within a college and the other colleges at UC Berkeley. Again, I highly recommend you attend an informational session for each of our campuses because there's going to be a lot of nuance within that. But very easy to switch your major in College of Letters and Science, for example, at Berkeley.
Yeah, at UCLA, it's a similar process. If you want to get into a specialty school, we recommend applying outright, either as a freshman or a transfer applicant. Our College of Letters and Science is, again, if you're in that college or if you're in the College of Engineering, it's easy to switch within that college, but to switch into a different college, specifically from Letters and Science into engineering, it is very difficult. There is a pathway, but it's very rare. And so if you want to go to UCLA to study engineering, then we recommend applying to the School of Engineering. But yeah, if you're within the same college, it's very easy. And I switched my major around so much just because at the very beginning, you're not really a declared major at UCLA. You're more so getting the required classes that you must take to apply to that major. So it's very easy to switch around within the college.
Awesome, thank you. Someone asked, how would I know whether or not to put certain types of responsibilities in the activities section or the additional comments section? For example, having to pick up more responsibilities at home because a parent lost a job due to COVID, where would that best fit?
That really will go wherever you see is going to be the best fit, right? It could be in the PIQs. It could be how you show a form of leadership, how you've overcome a challenge, an educational barrier. You can also put it as an educational opportunity. But you did bring up a great point about additional comments. So there's 2 additional comment sections in the UC application. In the academic history, which is 500 characters, and in the PIQs, which is 500 words. So I would, if you don't want to make it the center of a PIQ, we understand, and you can put it in the additional comments. If it's going to be more of a lengthy one, put it in the PIQ section, additional comments PIQ. And then I saw another question too that was like, where can I explain if your school doesn't allow you to take a specific class due to their policy? Things like that can also go in the additional comments section. That's kind of a catch-all. It doesn't have to be full sentences. It could be bullet points. It can be a mixture of bullet points and a paragraph. So really, it's really important to use those additional comment sections if you have more information. And you can even get with your classmates from your same high school and come up with like a short blurb on how COVID maybe impacted you all, or even things outside of COVID. So max 3 AP classes per year at our school, or AP English and AP Bio were offered at the same period, so you only could pick one or the other. And like things like that, or we had to do pass no pass, or with COVID-19 XYZ happened. Those kinds of blurbs you can share with high school like peers and just copy paste it into your additional comment section. That's not considered plagiarism. So I really encourage you all to work together in your communities, and don't think of it as you're competing against each other to get into these UC schools. Like work together to make sure that you can uplift each other and like help each other out with this application process too.
Yeah, I strongly encourage the use of the additional comment section box to describe really anything. There's a lot of differences in each school. And as Erica mentioned, if you can't take a certain class because they're offered the same period, that's definitely a valid mistake that you should be writing in your additional comment section. And so if you can put in extracurriculars for the original answer, then you should. But if not, the additional comment section is definitely key to use if you want to describe anything that you think is relevant to your application.
Awesome, thank you. Someone asked, do we need transcripts and or letters of recommendation?
All right, so transcripts, no. We don't take transcripts at the time of application. Everything will be self-report. So once you're admitted, you decide to come to one of our campuses, then we'll ask for official documents, and those usually will have to wait until after you graduate high school, because we'll want the final transcript with the high school date of grad for freshman applicants, of course. And in terms of, what was the other part of that question? So sorry.
Oh, it was just asking if transcripts or letters of recommendations were required.
And then letters of recommendation are going to vary. So UC Berkeley, we do offer the opportunity to a small percentage of our applicant pool to submit up to 2 letters of recommendation. One would have to be from a teacher and the other can be from whoever. And what's going to be important is that when you're applying to the UC, the email address that you use to sign up for the application, we're going to send you emails there to that email address. So make sure you're checking it, because not just Berkeley, but other UCs will also sometimes reach out to you via email and ask you for additional information or give you a supplemental. So it's crucial that you check that email, and we'll give you the rules there. But we don't take letters of rec when you apply. Like you can't just say, hey, I'm applying and here's some letters of rec. We'd have to request those from you. So keep an eye on your email. It's really, really important. Check that regularly.
Awesome, thank you. That takes me back to horror stories of not sending in letters of recommendation for Berkeley because I did not check my email. But so definitely be mindful of that, y'all. Here's another really good question in regards to personal insight questions for either or both of you to answer is, what are common mistakes in the activities section and personal insight question section that you would consider missed opportunities on the application? You know, any red flags or, tips that you want to give to students?
Yeah, some of the biggest missed opportunities are like when students in their PIQs write about their families. And I hear about how amazing your grandma was, that she immigrated to this country with $5 in her pocket. And I hear about her struggle and I'm like, cool, now I want to admit your grandma and she's welcome to apply as a transfer. Check it out, like I'll help her out. But for you, like, it's not about, like, and this is difficult. Like for some cultures, it's rude to talk about yourself, right? It's about the family. It's not about you. So it's not just like your family sacrificed for you. And I know you want to acknowledge that, but what have you done with the time and resources that your family sacrificed to give you, right? So, I mean, I can write all day about my parents' struggle, but at the end of the day, it's got to be about me, right? So what did I do with the opportunities given to me? And how did I honor that? So really focus on yourself in those PIQs. That's going to be crucial. And don't talk about things like on a macro level in general. You're not here to convince me of anything other than you're an amazing person. Like, so that's why, again, you really need to focus on you. The other thing I'll see is like someone will have a blank extracurricular section or like 1 or 2 things. And then I read in the PIQs and all of a sudden they're talking about all this other stuff that they do. And it was not an extracurricular section at all. Really take your time in that extracurricular section. For selective campus like Berkeley, and I'm sure UCLA, that can also be a make or break situation if we don't see any extracurriculars and you have them. And again, that can be non-traditional forms as well. And if you're not able to do extracurriculars, let us know in the PIQs, because I understand there's going to be parts of the Central Valley where getting to and from school is not a 5-minute walk. It could be like a 20-minute drive, right? And you have to have a car. And maybe you have to share that car in a large family. So y'all have to plan out, oh, you won't be able to do after school activities, or you have to stay at school till 6 because that's when I can bring you home. We don't know that kind of level of detail. So it's really important that you let us know that. And some students do a ton of extracurriculars. And then, you know, we find out that they do so much because home is not a safe space for them. And so you can also explain, like, if you're doing a lot, if there's other reasons for that as well, and how that can impact you. There's so many things that I learn in the PIQs and the ECs, and then I'll get applications where there's just so little, and like you get hints that there's more, but we're not allowed to read in a, like, make inferences. You have to explicitly tell us things on the application. I can't fill in the blanks for you all. You got to make sure you're filling in the blanks for me.
Awesome, thank you so much. Oh, go ahead, Norris.
I was going to say for the PAQs, I would echo that I think a mistake is students often don't speak about themselves, is what Erica said. And so speaking about yourself and talking about yourself, what you've done, your experiences, your journey is going to be the best thing you can do within your PIQs, and also using your voice. I know Erica also mentioned this earlier, but make sure that you are using your voice when writing about this. I would highly make sure that, you know, they're not going to be looking at kind of your grammar and how, like, whether you missed a comma on this sentence or not. And so to not really stress about that, rather stress about giving us your story and sharing with us kind of what your response is to the PIQ. Within extracurricular activities, again, I also say, I don't think I really realized the importance of them in high school. And I think that's something that I always stress to students now, is that there is importance in the extracurricular activities. And so make sure you spend a little bit of time in developing that description as well. Just try out a few different things to make sure you're showing the most impact, the most of what you've done within the activity, and not, again, just describing what the entire club did, because that can never really give enough of a description of what you've done. And that'll take you a lot further than just talking about what the club did as a whole.
Awesome. All right, one last question before we end out, just to respect everyone's time. I know y'all have already stayed a little longer than intended, and we really appreciate it. So one question that I want to clarify for folks is actually section. Okay, yeah. So I think some of these questions have been touched on a little bit, and y'all are welcome to rewatch this recording to see, you know, if you're able to get more answers the more times you watch it. But someone asked if all the information we've talked about today applies for graduate applicant students, or is it only for transfers and first-year applicants?
Yeah, graduate school is a whole different ball game, and that's gonna depend on each individual department within each UC. So absolutely check out, like for Berkeley, it's grad.berkeley.edu, and look at those individual programs, because graduate school admissions is just entirely different.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much. Thank you to our presenters and for everyone who is still on. I know a couple of folks have asked for the contact information of our hosts. You can check out the websites that they have for you here. Let me go ahead and copy and paste them. But while I do that, I also highly recommend that, you know, we have a lot of students in here as well whose questions we weren't able to get around to in this webinar, but we would love to in upcoming webinars, such as our, you know, for people having questions about personal insight questions and, you know, want to feel a little more confident in them before submitting them, or that you just have more questions, definitely recommend that you register for our college essay writing workshop happening on November 28th. And for anyone who is a transfer student or is looking to transfer, as we mentioned earlier, we have a transfer experience webinar happening next Saturday at the same time from 4 to 5. So if you are interested in that, it will be co-hosted by 2 UC Berkeley students. So if you have questions that are not only about your transfer student experience, but questions specific to UC Berkeley, highly recommend that you attend that. And let me go ahead and paste this in the chat for everyone. So first, here's the information that Erica and Noah have included to, you know, contact Berkeley and contact UCLA. Any questions that weren't answered today, we have, you know, screenshotted, and we'll try to address somehow in on our website once we post this recording. So look out for that. I highly recommend that you check it out again and share it with folks. And Yeah, so I'm also going to paste in the, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Kathy. I just wanted to mention, if I saw someone ask for my email, if you submit a contact us form, it is going to go directly to your admissions officer. So if you're in the Southern Central Valley, then I'm definitely going to get your contact. And if it's Northern Central Valley, it's going to go to Marcia, who is your rep. But definitely just submit something through the contact us form and we will get back to you.
Yep, awesome. And yeah, so that final link that I sent is the link to our workshops page for Central Valley Scholars, where you can check out our upcoming webinars and register for those. But so definitely, I'll give you all a second to open that up and save those on your desktops. But Noah and Erica, thank you so much for being here with us today. We have shared so much awesome information. I'll leave it to both of you if you have any closing words of advice for the students who have joined us here today.
Just thank you all for having us and for tuning in, watching the recording if you're doing that in the future. And just really, we truly, truly, truly want you to apply. We need students like the students who are attending this session. If you're sitting there like, I don't think I can do it, like you can do it, please apply. Central Valley Scholars is doing some really dope, amazing work. Continue to follow them and really just take advantage of everything that's available to you. And just know, like, we get it. Like if you're in the Central Valley, like you're going to be competing against, you think you're competing against like people in the Bay Area and LA, like we're here for the entire state of California, right? And so we want everyone to apply. So just please, please, please apply. We want to see you at our campuses.
Yeah, I wanted to thank everyone also for being here in the presentation and learning as much as you can. And just make sure that you do apply. I hope you all feel confident and comfortable in applying and knowing that you can be accepted. You're not just going to be applying to apply, you're applying to be accepted. And I hope you all understand that. I know there's not that many more days in November left, but just put as much time as you can that you're able to put in into these applications. And I'm really proud of you all for being here in the presentation and taking this initiative into learning more about the UC system. And so I hope you just all feel that confidence and that sense of pride in being able to be accepted into the UC.
Awesome. Alrighty. Well, thank you all so much for hanging in there. By the way, we've already taken a screenshot of everyone who has stayed until the end for the $50 raffle. So thank you all for being here. Thank you so much for your time and have a good rest of your night. Bye, everybody. I'm going to give it just a second while I get this list of folks who are still here. And we got a lot of thank yous in our chat as well. So thank y'all for, for hyping us up in the Q&A box. We appreciate it. All right, Noah, Erica, have a good rest of your night. Thank you so much for being here. Bye-bye.
Bye, thanks.